welcome to Create Crochet with me, Rebecca, and in today's video we're going to learn how to do these little squares, and we're calling this for our crochet along Granny's Garden. So let's get on and make. So to start off your squares you're going to need your middle colour, okay? So we're going to make a simple slip knot like so, and we're going to chain 6. So that's yarn over and come through is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. Coming to the first chain that you made, we're going to insert our hook like so, yarn over and come through both loops on our hook to make a slip stitch. Now that gives us a ring in which to put our next lot of stitches. So chain 1, 2, 3. That gives us the height of our double crochets. So that actually counts as our first double crochet. So yarn over and we're going to insert our hook into here. But this tail end we're going to lay over our chain stitches so that we don't have to weave in lots and lots of ends at the end of doing this. So yarn over into this loop here and pull up a loop, yarn over and go through 2, yarn over and go through 2 to complete the double crochet, and one more like so. So that gives us our first cluster, and then we're going to chain 1, 2. We're going to do 4 of these clusters in total, so still laying this tail end over our chain. Let's go ahead and make the rest of our clusters. So that's 1, 2, 3 double crochet and then chain 2, 1, 2, 3 and chain 2. So now we have 3 clusters, and then our last one will sit here. So that's again still going over that tail end. 1, 2 and 3, chain 2, and that beginning chain 3 we're going to come to the third chain and we're going to do a slip stitch. So that's 1, 2 and 3, and into that third one insert the hook, yarn over, come through the chain and come through the loop on our hook. Then we're just going to chain 1. That chain 1 is not part of the finished design, that is simply to secure our end. And then we're going to snip off colour 1 and just pull your hook through. And the reason why I chain 1 is it creates a really good knot where you're pulling your loop through. So there we have our 4 clusters. So then we take colour 2 and again we're going to make a nice little slip knot and come through and take your hook out of that slip knot. Insert your hook in any of the chain 2 spaces. I'm going to go into this one and I'm going to insert my hook straight into that chain 2 space. Now if you have a look at your knot, you have your tail end here. What we're actually going to do is turn it so that our tail end is pointing left. Hook onto the loop and just tighten that up a little bit, and then just come through and chain 1, 2, 3. Again, that chain 3 gives us the height and classes as our first double crochet. Now the reason why we put that tail end to the left is that when we do our cluster, we can actually go over this tail end. If it was pointing over there, it would be a little bit untidy to now bring it over. So that's why we put the tail end to the left, just to make sure it's all nice and neat and tidy. So these chain 2 spaces are actually going to work really quite hard because we're going to be putting 2 clusters into this one space here. So that classes off as our first double crochet, so we need to do 2 more. So that's 1 and 2. And then we chain 3. 1, 2, 3. Back into this same place, and again going over our tail end, we need to do another cluster of 3 double crochet. So that's 1, 2 and 3, and we chain 1, which gets us to our next chain 2 space. So the chain 3 is in between each cluster, and a chain 1 gets us to our next space that we need to do our clusters into. This tail end here, we're going to lie across that way. Trust me, if you don't do this, you're going to have a lot of ends to weave in, and if you're anything like me, you don't like weaving in ends. So yarn over, and we're going to go ahead and do our cluster of 3 double crochets. That's 1, 2 and 3, chain 3 and do 1, 2, 3, chain 1, go straight into this next 2 chain space. So that's 1 and 2 and 3, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, chain 1. Sorry, I just saw a knot beginning to happen in my yarn. I wanted to sort that out. So into our last one for 1, 2, 3, chain 3, and back in again for our last cluster. Still chain 1, and then we're going to slip stitch again to the top of our 3 chain. So that's in here. Try not to go into the top of your first actual double crochet. Try and go into the chain if you possibly can. That's in there. Yarn over, come through that chain and come through your work. Chain 1 to secure your tail end. Now with your tail end of colour 2, you're going to want to give yourself a little bit more yarn, because this then becomes the end that you use to sew your squares together, like so. And it's at this point that you can cut off any remaining tail ends within your squares. So not massively close to your work, because they will pull back, but try not to cut your work. So there you have your completed square, and now we need to attach it to the other squares. Now I have begun to do it, so that's what it looks like. Let me come out. That's what it looks like right now. And then with our new square, I'm going to pop it under this cream one here. So this yarn is particularly fluffy, so I have a hard time threading it on my needle, and I don't enjoy sewing as much as the next person, but it's a necessity. And just pop that through. Now I'm using a metal hook, a metal needle. You can use either plastic or metal, whatever your preference is. Okay, So coming back in so we have a better field of vision. With this square, as you'll notice, this tail end is more or less in the middle of our work and we need to get it to the edge. And all I'm going to do there is just weave my way to the middle of that chain and just pull through. Now when you pull through, don't pull really tight, otherwise you're going to gather your work. Just ease it off slowly, like so. Grabbing your next square, so let's pretend we're at the beginning. Grabbing your next square, this is the front of your work and this is the back. Okay, as you can see, it looks bubbly here, and that you can see has a twist. So you can see where you did your yarn over. Make sure that you're doing twist to twist so that it's right sides together. What I tend to do is just pinch out where the chain one spaces are, and then I can begin to sew my squares together. So that's just coming through. And there's nothing fancy about my sewing at all. It's just, it is what it is. Again, try not to pull too tight, otherwise you're going to pucker your work. Now when you come to your actual stitches, and not your chain but your actual stitches, you'll see, so that's the top of one stitch, you have yarn here and yarn here. We're going to try and only catch this loop here so that it lies nice and flat. So that's that yarn there and that yarn there, and just come through. Okay, so let me show you that once more. So if you pinch your work together, the two lines will become fairly obvious as to where you need to put your sewing needle. And we're just going to go all the way along fairly recklessly, just making sure that my stitches line up. Really simple, really easy. Honestly, there's nothing intimidating or difficult. And then here we are back at our chain. Still going to try and match chain to chain, like so. Now I have quite a lot of yarn left, so I'm going here and open up. So you can see that you haven't made a crease too much where you've actually stitched your squares together. There's no mountainous line, and then if you turn it over it looks fairly natural what you've done here. So because you have your yarn here, let's weave it through and try and get it to this corner edge here, and that is just a case of taking the needle and trying to hide it as you go so you don't have a line of yarn going across, and just taking it to the corner. You always want to try and take the beginning stitch from the corner. It's just easier, and you can see exactly where you are. It's more efficient, if you will. So there we have it. This is the squares I've already started to attach together. Again, I'm going to go right sides to right sides and do exactly the same process, but this time I'm going to go along two. When you do this, try and match up your chain spaces, and that's all there is to it. I've been Rebecca of Create Crochet. Thank you so much for watching this next instalment of the crochet along, and I'll see you soon, my lovelies. Bye.